Anyway, well, let's hit what's going on. Welcome everybody to the CARD meeting. Sorry I'm a little late from the phone call. What do we do first? Introductions. Yeah, so I'm Roger Rail. I'm the chair of CARD and chair of Site Resident for Safe Water. I'm a member of both. And apparently, one of the few people that's company are not paid to be here. Okay, we got more than usual. That's good.
Who's paid too little to be here?
How many of you have been involved in this for more than 5 years? More than 10 years? More than 15 years? More than 20 years? I think that's why I'm chair. There's some continuity in it, and the real challenge is to keep that continuity going. Anyway, let's go through the introductions.
Kevin Lund, Michigan Department of Environmental Quality.
Brian Nagel, the Attorney General, or Assistant Attorney General assigned to this case.
Kathy Shirey, DEQ.
Jeff Ainer, Concerned Citizen, Ann Arbor.
Jim Schultz, Concerned Citizen, Ann Arbor.
Amy McDonald, I work for the University of Michigan's Environmental Health and Safety.
I'm Katie Jusaitis from Congressman Dingle's office.
Ryan Stanton from the Ann Arbor News.
I'm Will Halfway. I live in Scioto Township, and Roger recruited me to be in the Scioto group recently, so I thought I'd find out more what's going on.
Kristen Schwakehofer, Environmental Health Director with Washington County Public Health.
Bryce Kelly, Scioto Township.
Dan Hamill, DEQ Project Manager for Gelman.
Michael Moran, Ann Arbor Township.
Shauna Milkey, Ann Arbor Citizen, and I'm Secretary for CARD.
Rila Caruso, Professor of Toxicology, University of Michigan, and CARD member.
Vince Caruso, Ann Arbor resident, Allen Creek Worship Group, the Sierra Club here on Harding Valley, board member, and CARD member, board member.
Bob Bailey, Scioto resident.
Kathy Knowles, Scioto Township trustee.
Mitch Ailman, Michigan Department of Environmental Quality's Remediation and Redevelopment Division.
Okay, so I guess the first thing is the approval of the minutes.
So this is a vote for the board members. I move that we approve the minutes from the October meeting.
I'll second.
All right, everybody in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Any opposed? Okay.
Thanks for
Thank
doing
you.
it.
Okay, then actually, Shannon, I'd like you to take care of the going through the minutes while I do some of the housekeeping stuff.
Going through the
agenda.
Okay. Well, with the DEQ members, I wonder if you would mind taking away with the updates on the sampling and summary of recent activities.
Okay. We did complete what that is referencing there, surface water sampling. We completed last week some surface water sampling. We had wanted to do it in October, but things got real busy with EPA meetings and that type of thing. So we did get out there. We sampled at 9 locations. Basically, most of them, all of them except one on the west side. The third sister lake, Little Lake, Smith Ponds, both ponds. The unnamed tributary right downgraded downflow of the outfall where it comes out of the Gelman outfall. We did it as we went downflow. We did unnamed tributary at Park Road, approximately in that location. Unnamed tributary at Jackson Road. Here's a map. I didn't have one electronically, but basically where the orange dots are is where we sampled. And then we had the Honey Creek up at Dexter. One of the things that I do want to point out that we did it after that 3 or 4 day rainfall, so it was high water in the surface waters. I should have the data by the end of November. We fully intend to go back and do those in a low water condition, drier condition. So it just turned out that way. We had the high water condition here in this sampling. We added one based upon just some observation that Kevin and I had done over time. We did also the pond up at Arbor Landing Pond, which is the apartment complex just to the north east of Wagner Road. Basically, if you know where the Arbor Landing apartments are, there's a pond, and I'm sure it was man-made related to stormwater management, but we thought that it was a good location just to see.
Connected to the computer.
And these are all grab samples. They're just collect water, and the analysis that we asked for is just dioxane. So I will post those on the web page. I will put them into the database that's on the web page, and then we will continue monitoring those now over time since we sampled the first time this time. We had intended to do the HCHR. We just didn't get up there and do it. That's the HCHR, Honey Creek, Huron River point is where Gelman takes their daily sample required for their NPDES permit for bromate. And we just didn't connect up with them. They do it daily, so we'll do that again. We sampled that once 2 months ago, and it was non-detect for dioxane. So we will continue that sampling too with them at that location. So that was the surface water sampling. The B is a summary of recent activities. I put on a new summary on the database dated in October 2017, and basically like people.
Web page, you mean?
Yeah, I'm sorry, the web page. It is what I came up with some of the questions and some of the comments we received back on the first summary back in June. In it, where this will evolve over time. We are now working with the EPA, and so there will be some. We will work this in with what they have requested from us on quarterly reports back to them about the Gelman site related to the recent request for Superfund and their decision to not move on to the Superfund site, but maintain a close watch on the federal side. They've assigned Michael Burkhoff, a project manager, so he and I will be working together. What I've covered in there, I'd like some people to take a look at and make suggestions, is if we've done residential well sampling, you know, what we have done in 2017, what's proposed in 2018. You know, there was 47 wells done in 2017. Two residential wells along Elizabeth Road had concentrations that from 1 to 2 ppb. One of those wells was the first time that there was a concentration. But we've had Elizabeth Road right next door on either side concentrations of dioxane in that area, always in the 1 to 2 ppb range. We are going to sample 104 water supply wells proposed in 2018. These wells, that the number and which wells are identified with between the DEQ and the Washtenaw County Health Department. So we get together and propose what wells need sampled. They propose any additions, and we try to do. We have some of them this year that were last sampled 2 years ago, along Rose Drive, up to the northwest, Christine Drive, Lakeview Drive on east of the site. So we are proposing to do 104 water supply wells next year. That will start approximately in March. Again, that's the county will be doing the actual sampling, so it's based upon they have clearance and now to do it. So they usually start that in years past. It has been in March, and it'll go through the September.
So just to be clear, are there any wells that are used for drinking water have anything above 1 part per billion or 1 part per billion or above? That you're aware of?
No, I mean, other than Elizabeth Road had in the past there had been 2 ppb you know, 1 to 2 ppb right there.
How many
look-
wells was that?
there's 3 wells have had detections. This last year was 2 wells had
2 or
detections.
3? Yeah.
Yes. All right together on Elizabeth Road. And we do those yearly, and in fact, those particular wells are done twice a year. Most of the wells that I'm identifying here are done yearly, you know, once in a year, but selected ones based upon recommendations from Washington County, we authorize sampling twice a year. They are on the database. If you can get in and get to the download my access database on the Gelman site, they're listed by address. There's you will also see on our webpage the actual kind of a summary table of the different years. You will notice now that I identify only by I change it and identify only by address. There's no what is it.
Let's actually go to that. So I find the easiest way to get to any of the stakeholder websites is just go to srsw.org.
You have links,
click
yeah.
on one of the links here. So we're go to the Gelman, DEQ Gelman website.
As he's getting there, I will tell you that I put also on the summary, there's links to go to specific locations too.
And if you want to get on the DEQ mailing list, you click up here, the listserv.
Yes.
And
Currently, there's 592 people. I haven't checked this week, so it goes up every week.
Right.
There's 592 people that are on the listserv, so
Yeah.
whenever stuff's posted, I send out a listserv notification, or anything happening, I send out a list note, and it goes to those 592.
There's not a, that's not public, right? Who's on the listserv?
No, that's not public.
And you get bounce backs from that, right?
I get what I get.
If somebody's obsolete, you take them off the list.
Yes, if I find out. I do get back from the listserv from the people that run it. I get back information on how many,
So
how many clicks.
is the current after you've
Yeah.
reset.
Yeah, and it like I changes every week.
But if there's something that CARD would like to send out to the entire DEQ list, sort of, we would go through you.
Yes, and I would, frankly, I would probably ask, okay, make sure I have permission to,
Right.
to, with the management to do that.
But it would be through you, not somebody
Yes.
else.
Well, we probably need a FOIA request of for everyone.
We're not asking for information.
He's asking if he
We're
can send things out.
Send things that we think everybody who's on the list should know about.
Well, it's,
We send it to you and you decide whether you should forward it.
Well, I just get permission. I mean, I'm not going to decide.
That's
permission to.
DTMB
No.
has some rules on state websites.
Yes, that's what I'm getting at. I have
That's what you said.
observations that decisions are made above me to, that way.
Part of CARD's goal is to keep
Yes.
people informed.
It might be a question for Washington County Health, but some of the customers on Wagner Court, Wagner, Dexter Ann Arbor Road in that area near Rose,
Okay.
they want to know, should we get our wells tested and how?
The how they're, the.
I mean, does the county provide that service, or should they be finding a private vendor?
The county does not have the ability. I mean, we work with DEQ,
Okay,
so it's their lab that all the samples are going to.
all right.
We pick,
but
it's a
should the
DEQ.
request come through you, though?
Yeah.
They could
Typically,
contact.
they can contact me or Jenny to take a look at it. Usually what Jenny has looked at is said, okay, you're further away, we don't have detections here yet.
Okay.
And we do some periodic sampling in different areas.
Yeah, because they're, obviously, Wagner Court is north of Rose.
Right.
And
So-
actually, all three of them are a little bit north
North,
of Rose, but
right.
pretty close. One was on Rose as it makes that hard bend almost at the end.
Okay.
Here you go.
And so they asked me, Scott asked me about it, and I said, let me find out, I'm going tomorrow.
On their webpage, they do have a question and answer.
Okay.
That has labs, local labs, and how,
Right.
who
There
can
are
do
other
them.
private labs that do offer the service, and
Right.
that's
So
all on
you
our
can-
website as well.
A homeowner can have their well tested
Okay.
themselves.
And then those results will come back to you, so they'll become part of this record, or?
If you get them privately tested, you get the results. Nobody else knows about them ever.
Right, but we asked
But
that
you'd
you
like
let
to.
us know so we can put them on
Yeah.
and have that information.
Oh, okay.
That's what we've done in the past, or Jenny has done in the
Thank you.
past.
So is it possible, so I guess I'm just seeking a little bit further clarification. If somebody has a concern, can they request that their wells be sampled? It may be denied, but can they request it of either
It's
the
state
county
state or
department
county
or the
cost.
state?
They have done
Yeah,
that,
they've done that in the past.
and we have basically identified, well, you're 2 miles from.
Yeah.
Well, I understand
Yeah.
that, but the process for that,
Yeah.
is that, I think that's
Right,
what's being
the process
asked.
would be to contact the county. And we
Okay.
would evaluate the site and, you know, either say, I don't think you're at risk, or, yeah, we'll put you on the list.
Okay, thanks.
And that evaluation is in conjunction, I mean, they contact me and let's,
All right.
you know, get the heads together and.
Yeah,
how
they
far
hate to
out
see
are they?
private, private testing going to waste. It might as well be part of the
Right.
record.
Right, and that's what.
People that are
they
several
would like.
miles away,
Yeah.
we should
Sure.
do the private testing.
Yeah.
There are instances where private testing or individual well testing not close to the plume has been in the database, and that's partly because it went through the company. The company tested the wells for the people.
So the date, you know, I get all information that sampling from the company, and I upload it into the database that they started the database, and then we maintain it now just with information.
But it's not the same database. The base is not the same. There was a changeover of their database just before they cut you off from the database. That we know there are differences between their base database and your base database. I suppose those were resolved someday.
Like I said, the residential well data is on that database. We're proposing 204 wells in 2018, and that moves. I mean, if we get indication through the county or DEQ, we get together and authorize additional wells if we feel that someone's, you know, we need to find out if someone's at risk. So,
Dan, is the 104 comparable to past? Is that a typical?
that's a little larger. Well, in the last couple of years, it's typical because we've done a lot of stuff. But usually it's in the 30 to 40 range. Like this year it was 47 wells. So the 104 is an upgrade or up more, but we are, as we promised to sample certain locations, Rose, Lakeview, every 2 years. So this is the second year, so now that adds to that total.
This goes into the state's database for residential sampling.
Yes, it goes into there, so you can.
And I periodically get an export of that, like annually. And then what we haven't done is taken the data, just automatically taken the data from there and merged it in to your database. But you say you're doing that now.
I do that.
New stuff.
Yes, I do that, right. But I haven't merged the historic stuff. I'm not the...
I mean, why enter it twice?
I don't disagree with you, Roger, but we've tried to work a little bit, and there's been some roadblocks or speed bumps that have popped up, more of the interfacing the two, and we just haven't resolved those. So it's easier, the current ones, that I just put them in.
Well, it's the same thing I've found, is that the identifier for a well is different on your internal one than on the Gelman one.
Absolutely.
And even on the Gelman one, the identifiers are sometimes different between the sampling data and the well data, the wells table. So those are the kind of things that are easy to fix at one time and have a procedure. You know, you do a one-time matchup, then you use that as an interim to do the, I mean, that's a database problem. That's not,
right.
It's not a barrier to
change, you know,
to automatically having that update happen.
So we just haven't resolved those myself,
and that's where, you know, somebody here can help.
Yeah, and plus, just to realize, you can go on the state database and look at, sampling information for locations around the state.
No, that's not linked to from your Gelman website.
No. What I have is I download the Gelman is a site underneath that, and I just download all the and put on the web page sampling related to Gelman.
By the way, this is the link that he was talking about to download the Access database. So the Access database currently there is through September, and he's about to update it for October.
So what's the action level currently for a well that needs to be dealt with, a drinking water well? 1 part per billion, 5 part per billion?
When you mean action level, you mean?
Well, when something will happen.
Criteria is 7.2.
So it has to be at 7.2.
It's 7.2.
So if it's 5, nothing happens.
If it's 5, what happens is we start evaluating and making sure more sampling, rather than a yearly, maybe take another look at it sooner, but that's what happens. But the actual number of the criteria where, we can.
Because the hard number is 7.2
right.
for definitive action.
Right.
Anything below that is a gray area?
No,
right.
It's not. Well,
yeah.
Is it gray or is it nothing?
Well, like I said, what happens is the DEQ will start evaluating anything lower if it's approaching that number. We want
if there are little kids in the house, or infants, or pregnant women, will that be considered?
That is a possibility. If we know that information, that's a possibility. Again, we will work with the health department too.
Yeah.
We both go. Jenny and I have both identified. I mean, she has sometimes on the residential well side, because of the Washington County Health, she has the red flag goes a little quicker with her. I'm looking at a whole bunch of monitoring wells and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So she has always, red flags on, hey, this first time we had this in one.
Which is why they're monitored twice a year, so that we can.
I think what we're asking is.
The state's criteria historically has been, if you're impacted above certain criteria, you will, look at a different water supply for you. If we are seeing a trend and it's considered that you're in imminent, there's an imminent expectation that will be exceeded, we will also move forward to get a water supply.
And that could,
if you're seeing an upward trend, yeah, we'll move forward. We won't wait for it to hit 7.2 magically. On the other hand, if it's relatively stable at 3 or 4, yeah, we probably just increase the monitoring and assure that didn't change. There's a certain amount of professional.
I think what part of what we're asking is if it hits a level, say 5 or 3 or something like that, is there an inquiry to determine whether there are, for example, infants in bed house, or that sort of data?
That's something we'd ask
that
the health department.
It would be helpful if there was some formal policy would apply across the board at certain points, I think.
Well, so we should confer further with the health department, because this 7.2 criterion is protective of all the populations, with the understanding that I think it's a 32-year exposure scenario, 6 years, 0, based on kids 0 to 6 years old, and then 26 years old or 26 years as an adult. That's what that 7.2 is based on. So certainly the 7.2 is the enforceable number. As Kathy said, if we've got an increasing trend, we'd look at it, and then if we need to talk further with the state health department about a steady concentration at 5 with a sensitive population, whether there's anything we could do about that without an increasing trend, and that's we have to talk about it.
So the reason there's concern, I think, being expressed at the table is because under the old standard, people would get their wells tested at their homes, their residential wells tested. They would receive letters. I've actually read letters. And the letters would say, your water residential well has been tested. The 68 parts per billion was detected. No further action required. And, we know today with new knowledge that really was not protective of them. And so there's really some debate. There's really not a lot of toxicology information on dioxane. And so I think that's what some of the concerns are being expressed. That I know that you came with the 7.2, and I'm glad to hear that if trend analysis, I just think even just maybe reporting is required. Letting residents know this is what you're exposed to.
Well,
with some kind of public information about.
Have you read the letters we sent?
What?
Have you read the recent letters?
No, I haven't seen a recent letter.
Yeah. So we do. We send them letters, and over the last 2 or 3 years, I think we've revised them to try and be more clear and concise. But certainly, you know, we're open to feedback if you.
I'd be happy to. Some are being clear. I think it's a matter of being protective, you know, for potential.
Well, but providing enough information to all those residents, right? And we've created a public health fact sheet to help provide that information. And I know we've sent it to those residents before. I don't know if it goes out with every letter continually.
Well, they should be notified the level, if it's like even 2 or 3.
Absolutely, they always get
Okay.
notified. Absolutely,
If-
100%.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's, like Rita was saying, in the past, that wasn't always the case.
Well, they got told the number, but it wasn't put into context of potential
Yeah,
risk
and
to health.
Okay.
Correct, yeah, I think our letter's always put in context. That's the question as to what Gelman sent to the homeowners, and I don't know what that looks like.
Are there other recent activities from the quarterly updates to share?
Again, the quarterly update from October, as I will start putting in summary information that I gleaned from the information I get from Gelman to make it much more readable to the layperson. Monitoring well sampling in there, you know, basically I will start putting in, you know, how many wells were sampled each of the months. How many times DEQ, how many samples DEQ split at monitoring well locations, and again, any significant result, you know, peculiar results, a summary, and then also where to go get the information off the web page, where similar where Roger had up on there. I also have a heading current remediation activities where I summarize what has gone on, the pump and treat, for example, how many extraction wells in different months and how many volumes, how many gallons of contaminated water was pumped out and treated by Gelman. So I will continue to keep that up, and again, put a link in of where you can get the monthly specific information, but I summarize it so people understand, you know. Yep. That aren't technical, that, you know, hey, in June there was 13 extraction wells operated, and in that month they did 18,550,000 for 47 gallons of contaminated groundwater was extracted.
Yeah, I'm trying to find on your website again where that link was.
Well, that's you're down. You're one link down. Go to the back to the Gelman of right there.
One, yeah.
Yeah, I put it up top, so it's one of the first ones as you read to come down, rather than putting in a subdirectory below. And it's the October 13th is, and I'll date them. I have made a kind of promise to do these quarterly, and again now I will be doing those in conjunction with the EPA. So what will happen to these is Mike Burkhoff and I from the EPA and myself, we will come up with a quarterly report that I'm going to be putting give to EPA, but I'll use it for here too. So
Dan,
yeah.
Suggestion.
Yes.
See, it has the date here inside it, but on the name of the file it doesn't.
Okay.
So if you, what I do for recurring things is I use year, month, day, 2017, 10, 13, so that when you look at a list of all the documents, they're chronological.
You're right. The name
rather
of
than
the file
spelling out
is
the month or anything like that, and you know, that way, and you always use the 2-digit days and 2-digit months so that, you know, they stay sorted that way. You put that in front, then, you know, 3 years from now, you can go back and look at all the things in order.
Okay. I'll get with you, Roger, and we'll figure something out to make it a little bit. Yes.
So I have a couple of questions. You referred to once when you first started talking about the quarterly reports that EPA had requested certain things in it, and that was something I noted was really missing in the meeting yesterday. Do you have did they actually tell you things that should be in the quarterly report?
If you look at the letter.
I don't have the letter.
I have the letters.
I was not sent.
In this pile here, there is letters.
It's not publicly available, I understand.
Well, I just haven't posted them. You know, I just haven't posted them. So I mean, it will be publicly available. Basically,
they just came through last. What was it? Friday?
So basically, there is a summary of what we're expecting. you know, there's good, they want.
So it does say.
Yes,
it spells
residential
out.
well sampling activities, and we talked about the one I'm already doing.
Yes.
So it does have
Okay.
kind of some bullets. That
Great,
is
I'll
going
look
to
for that.
change.
Okay.
As we start, and they get feedback, we get feedback.
Okay.
It's a project in, you know, in progress. And as that's why I made clear yesterday, like the first one between the EPA and it'll come out in, well, we'll work it in January, but it'll come out by the end of January.
Okay.
And, but they gave us at least some initial information up front.
Okay.
And I will post these, I just haven't had time to get them on their webpage.
Is there anything in your new report, and that is in your old report, that you don't expect to include in the new report?
No.
Oh, come on, they only get bigger now.
In fact, you know,
sometimes that ends up in.
we use this October report as, he used it as kind of a starter template. And then they added some more technical stuff, and now, you know, that he mentioned, trend analysis, groundwater levels, potentiometric surface maps, you know, which we do get from Gelman on a semi-annual basis. So that's why we made it semi-annual, because we get the information from them already semi-annually. But again, this was a start, and I fully expect that there'll be additions based upon comments as people read them.
Great.
I think it would be helpful to have a link to a map that shows where the samples were. I mean, ideally, you just create a KML file that you link to, and then people could open it in some KML viewer to see for their own eyes laterally where things are. And this is something I'm going to be talking about.
You're talking about the surface water sampling, and Dan just summarize, Roger.
Yeah, I mean, just automatically put it in so you can view it in something like this.
Right, and I haven't done that because, again, it's a little more technically intensive.
Well, you're not
than
going to do it without consulting
with DTMB, so
making it compatible.
To continue, I just have a couple of questions about the quarterly report. Who is it geared for? Like, who are you writing this for?
Well,
and what level is it to be at?
The level, both the EPA and what I started with, is more of a layperson level, at least someone that, you know, that's why I summarized a lot of the stuff.
My next door neighbor who doesn't know anything about it.
You know, I wanted to also point out how much groundwater was pumped, contaminated,
right,
and treated.
Yeah, I think that's good.
So it's geared, and the EPA has that same thought, at least when are working together to generate the letter and the summary. It's geared toward not the scientific, advanced technical person. It's geared toward someone to ask questions, everyday questions.
So it would be great to make sure to define terms that might be more specialized.
And that's okay. Yeah. That's a good suggestion.
Yeah.
You know, I know terms, although acronyms, I know terms, but yes, and I could miss that. So we'll make sure of that.
So what I've heard a lot about is that it'll include things on the monitoring plan, and some on the remediation for how much water was treated and volume. And I think that's great. How about updates on developing changes to the plan?
Well,
in court action. Just even if you can't say what happened in the court. Just say, we had another appearance in the court, so-and-so presented their case and we presented our case, and that's that.
Nothing has happened in the court since the original hearings.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's what to put in every quarterly report. There has been no appearance in court. There's been no action in court.
That's a
since,
good thing to
you know, January 2016. I mean, even that's information.
I have no problems. I will, we'll work it through the AG and what we can and can't do, you know. But that's just another heading to me.
Yeah, no, I think that, I guess that's my feedback, that I'd like to see
that's
that
fine.
in the
You know, that's
report.
I mean, in here, I stopped at current remediation activities, but for example, I have surface water and seep sampling activities, and I had the ones that I planned. Future surface water, what we had just completed in October. This was done before we did this, but you know, I'll keep that in there as applicable. Recent investigations, you know, I have a heading for that. In this particular case, there was no recent investigation, but if we did another similar surface water, shallow groundwater investigation, I would summarize it there. Other activities, I did put down where what DEQ attended, what, like town hall meetings, you know, the card
That's good
meetings.
community outreach.
You know,
Kind of
you know,
these
where
rubrics
things,
to
you know,
put
so
on.
to identify
Yeah.
that, hey, there's a couple things, to identify that we are involved that way, but also people saying, oh, there was a town hall meeting, oh, there was a card meeting, I'm gonna go to, you know, I'm gonna start looking for those.
Just to remind everybody, this is what we do here.
Excuse me.
In fact, it's still there on their website. List of recent documents provided to information repositories. This obviously isn't being kept up because the last one was 2013. But you can see how these were basically monthly or every couple months reports that would go to the repositories. And they look like this. And the later ones, these are links. So you can actually click on a link. And look at the report. I'd like to get back to this because there's a lot of background information that you're getting and
Well, each one, just realize each one of the reports is on the webpage in its you know, appropriate subdirectory, you know. So yes, you know, when you know, as when I took over for Sybil, she didn't, you know, we didn't stress this part of it. We were getting, you know, the actual documents on. So
yeah, but
I haven't kept up that type of summary. It's a rework. It's you know, same information.
Different approach.
Yeah.
But this had more detail. This, in the
define-
older days, this actually had copies of emails that were going back between the company and the DEQ. We don't get those anymore.
Yeah.
So it's like you're not talking to the company anymore. Well, we know you're talking to the company. So, but we're not privy to those.
And some of that coincided with the development of a department policy and how we, what we put on the web page, and, you know, to help everybody here understand the site-specific websites that we have on our, linked on our website are not meant to be the entire copy of the file. So our goal is to make sure that the public is informed about what's happening at these sites and provide resources, but it's not meant to be a copy of the full file. And I think, Dan, didn't you say the report that you put out every quarter now has links, hyperlinks, that people can click on it for results?
Yeah, it goes to the where Roger had up. It'll go to the selected documents subdirectory, the recent analytical subdirectory. Roger's talking about another.
This is the one you're talking about.
Yeah, and the recent analytical.
The one up above.
Yeah.
Go back one, Roger. It was the summary of recent activities. That general summary of recent activities.
Yeah, I put links to
actions.
where when I talk about something.
No, that's
well sampling, residential well, I put the link in the document so someone can move them to where they could look at the actual data or the table for the whole year, for example.
So in your October report, you just say that you got some active links.
Yeah, if you look there, there's active, blue ones are actively, you know, one monitoring well base map. We referenced monitoring wells where there's a base map. And we will be up, by the way, just to let the CARD group now, I'm requested and, you know, fully expect that it's been 2 years, 2015 was the last time the base map was updated. We had comments, so I'm working with Gelman to update that. So.
General question
that kind of
map
thing should be on the report, like you're
What does
asking
base
for
map
this
mean?
kind of stuff.
I mean, I literally last week. So
Okay, neither of us knows what you mean by base map. Base map?
Roger, click on it.
What does base map mean?
Can you?
It's a term that.
It's the map of all the wells. Right
Of all the wells,
there.
okay.
Yeah, you know, the base.
Well distribution map?
Yeah, the monitoring wells. So
Monitoring well
if you
distribution
click on
map.
that, that's if you've seen this one. Here's a hard copy.
It's coming up.
Yeah, see that's
Yeah,
the one
okay.
that has and that's the one that they provide. So that has all the monitoring wells on. There have been some changes since 2015. For example, some extraction wells have been properly abandoned because they changed and new ones put in. So they're not referenced on here. So
Just so you know, the term base map actually refers to the map without the wells on it.
Okay.
And you can add the wells to it, or you can add for other sites, maybe trench pits, or, you know, just whatever features you want, but the base map is
I'm using what base map to me is this map.
This is like a battleship map, because at the bottom, it's got all of the wells, and there's some coordinates and a grid system, so you can find it.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying.
Yep, that's what that is.
No, you're right, though. It's the sort of term we
If you
toss
want to
around all the
engage the
time.
community, I mean, I'm actually not that illiterate in this
Yeah.
field,
Great-
and I didn't know
great
what you were
feedback.
talking about.
That's great feedback.
And I didn't even think of it that way.
Yeah.
Base map to me was this map.
That's right.
But
You have
to
that.
someone that,
I think we could easily craft a map that's monitor well distribution map, so the layperson can understand that that's what
and
we're
I
trying to
could
convey.
put the link, the title of that link could be that, and
Yes.
then it would be much more informative to the person using that, looking at that summary.
Mitch, follow-up question
Sure.
on the emails, Mitch. When you guys correspond with Gelman, like, what, are those emails on the website at all?
Not
Not normally.
recently, you know, in the
They
past
would be part of
number
the
of years.
file.
When did they stop being on the website?
I mean, Sybil was putting some select emails on. She never put all of the emails.
No.
Sybil was putting some select ones on that would serve as correspondence, and I could, you know, we put our letters as correspondence on
Yeah,
there.
I was going to say, if we had emails that documented something like a formal request to them, I imagine we'd probably post them, but we normally do try and put that in an actual correspondence, as opposed to an email that sort of says, okay, so what date are you going to get me something by, or, you know, a little more.
These are substantial, generally substantial emails that said, you know, here's a response to your response, you know, to the complaint, to an issue. So that's something that I think needs to be added to the quarterly report, are the issues that are current and what's being done on those issues.
If
We get that from the company on their quarterly reports. There's issues that they've resolved, and then there's issues for the next quarter. But there's never any follow-up from one quarter to the next. Like, okay, we're going to be doing something in the next quarter, but there's never a direct link back to, here's a task that we identified for the next quarter, but you never that doesn't get tracked through as being done. You know what I'm saying? It might be 2 quarters away that it finally gets done, but there's never like an outstanding task. You know, if you were doing real project management, if you're a company that's, you know, you got something you have to do, you're gonna track that and see if you're actually, what you're doing to get that done. And we're not getting that from their reports, and you should be able to work from their reports and say, what are you doing in regards to those tasks that they set out, that I presume they've talked to you about, and keep us informed on these new developments.
if you remember, the EPA had that as going to be part of the progress reports I give to them. There will be an ongoing identification and discussion about issues and concerns that have come up.
So that's a work in progress.
Yeah, it's coming. You know, the EPA has put it on their agenda for the progress reports. Yes, sir.
I have a question about the monitoring wells, and I have 2 grandkids who live on Delwood, and there's wells in front of their house. And when they come to do the monitoring, my daughter-in-law said that whatever device they use, they lay it on the grass when they were done, when they were closing it up. Is there any danger to that? Because my grandkids are out there playing.
Well, no, I don't consider that you think there's any danger. You know, how they sample it is they containerize any of the contaminated groundwater. So, and then they clean off the instrument. You know, it's basically a pump that's on a reel with the hose down. And so before they do clean off or put it in clean water and pump it through and then wash the outside with water, and that's when I've seen them lay out if they had to roll it up that way. So I don't think there's, any concern that you have highly contaminated groundwater, that are still on the pump itself. I mean, they have to do a cleaning because we want the sample to be representative of that. So they clean after use, after it's been down the well. Everything I've seen when I've been out, their sampling methods, it's usually before they lay anything down, they're cleaning it, so it's been cleaned off. That I saw, but I guess I would have to see what.
Where are you at Delwood?
573.
573?
So do they wash it off into the street, or is it into
No.
the grass?
No, they can.
Or do they collect that?
They can collect it.
Road.
Yeah, they collect. Well, they collect it. Like I said, any of the groundwater they pump out prior to sampling, they collect that. And then after their decon water, they collect that, and then they take it back to the ponds, the red pond, the green pond, the ponds. They put it in their treatment pond. That's where the water comes from the extraction over, and it goes into a pond, and then they bring it inside, treat it. So they do have a big tank in the truck, the big box truck, and that's what they and then they would insert that pump into a bucket with clean water, and that's wash it, kind of wash it off, and then that's also sucked. The clean water is sucked into the tank. So I mean, as far as is there some splashing that could go around, but it's mainly clean water. They're not moving contaminated groundwater around.
And I don't know if this is 5-something Delwood. There's only 2 wells I see on Delwood.
Which ones?
NWKD-1S and NWKD-1D. So is it the homeowner well that's being sampled, or the well?
No, it's the
monitoring well. Right?
Monitoring well.
So it's probably this one and its sister.
They're out at the edge of the street.
So it was up to 220 parts per billion in 2016.
And again, your exposure, what you're asking for, any exposure route would be dermal, direct contact, and that the number we were talking about, 7.2, is if you drink the contaminated groundwater. Dermal contact is orders of magnitude higher than.
And it's likely they're not going to get thermal contact anyway.
No, right. Most of the, most.
You'd have to have prolonged dermal contact.
Right.
That shows the depth of
and they're basically
running barefoot in the front yard, and
no, like I said, they clean the instrument off because we want the next sample. We want the instrument. So there's a lot of clean, regular water that they're washing. That you see that would be they're using right, that you actually see it.
Can I find like their specific site on their address on the website, like what's been happening with that well?
It's on. Well, you can yes. I mean, you can go to the database and look up that well, and it give the concentration, what the sampling results were. Roger also has on his own website similar. That's what you're looking at, his website. So there's the results right there. The concentrations over the years.
And that's based on the same data that Dan's talking about.
Right. We share. I give it to him, and it's shared. Gelman gives it to Roger.
So if they
I actually use your version.
Okay.
I would tell them if they see anything that doesn't look right.
Right.
Contact.
Yeah, I mean, if for example, I'm not at every well, but the procedure that I've seen and is they clean the instrument off, and that's where you could potentially have something laying on the ground, even if it was just come out of the contaminated well and laid on the ground. Very, not, you're at minimal, not hazardous. Minimal contaminated groundwater is going to be dripping off the pump. But they use a lot of clean water once they get it out of the well after sampling.
Does Gelman have like a published sampling procedure and decon procedure somewhere that we can look at, or?
Yeah, they have a draft quality assurance project plan. I can. Yeah.
And have they recently moved to low flow sampling for all of your wells?
No, they do they have low flow sampled, but you're talking, the procedure they're using is a purging because of the depths of groundwater and that type of thing. They have used more of a purging, where you purge out a certain volume.
So we split samples at the University of Michigan at Saginaw Forest,
Mhm.
DEQ, Mountain DEQ when Paul comes out.
Yep.
And previously they had done the 3 well volumes purge, but now they have transitioned to low flow sampling.
They have started to transition to low flow when probably their contractor that's doing low flow, right? It's probably
It's Robert Ursine with Paul, so
they have a subcontractor that goes out and does, and then they mainly use low flow sampling for that, you know. But
So do you know what procedures outlined in this draft document that you were referencing?
I know the purging is outlined.
Okay.
So the low flow is, I know that they had identified that they were using low flow, and basically the contractor has his QA/QC procedure too. So let me see what's available that you can look at.
Yeah, I think we should keep moving through the agenda.
So yeah, we're getting.
No, sorry, no, this is important. It's important for people in the community to ask the questions, and we're getting up to, yes. But I think we're on items 3D. Roger, there were a couple of questions you had from the Gelman third quarter report. I wondered, could you?
Wait, you think we're on what number?
Item 3D.
Did we do the Marshy area spring 2000?
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. No, this was kind of a last minute agenda item. Roger had observed some temporary pathways being laid down in the Marshy area, and we were wondering what that was about.
Yeah, I might as well take the lead on this because what we know is basically through our confidential settlement discussions, and if anybody's going to breach those, I guess it's me. So I'll get in trouble instead of them getting in trouble. And Roger, I'm surprised because you were aware of the permitting process to do this work in the wetland, and you knew that was happening, but
yeah, I don't know the details of it though.
Yeah.
But this is what shows up on the aerial photograph. So,
and we've basically talked to Gelman about what they're doing out there. They're doing it voluntarily.
These look like temporary.
Yeah.
There's the road or pathway coming up, and then this looks like it's temporarily installed in the marsh area.
Right.
Pads to get
So
equipment out
that's
there.
a Google image.
Yeah, so I didn't know what size of equipment they would need to do in order to
Or what they were doing.
Well,
to move around in the marshy area.
Yeah, basically they're doing part of what I'm not sure if it's necessarily in reaction to the request, but there have been all these questions about what's still on the Gelman site and is it serving as a source,
Soil
ongoing
concentration.
source. Yeah, so they're looking at soils and the groundwater out there.
Okay, that's what we need to know.
Taking a second look at it basically because it's been quite a while. And when they get all their work completed and into a report that analyzes it, we'll receive that, and at that point in time, we'll be sharing it the way we share other reports.
Is there a schedule for receiving that data?
I don't know that we have a hard date yet.
Because this happened in April. That's correct.
Yeah, they were doing work out there just recently, though. We recall questions about.
So is that normal to take 6 months for data to be released?
Yeah. So is there just a ballpark figure when the data would be available?
Well, it's
5 months.
It's not really just data availability, but it's actually going to be a report that what they've done, what their conclusions are.
Any kind of ballpark number on that?
No, I don't think we've discussed it.
The question has been asked several times.
Yeah.
Do you know if the sampling is according to what the EPA concerns were about, showering, the shallower depths than they've been sampling before, all the way down to where the dioxane may be underneath there? How deep were
we
these?
generally
haven't seen
we
work
generally
plan.
know, but we don't have exact details.
I'm sorry, Mitch, you said you haven't seen a work plan?
That's correct.
Right.
It's voluntary, actually.
It's voluntary.
They're not
Okay.
required to.
It's their own property.
There was a permit there were permits issued by the state, the township, and the county. The work that was being
Boring.
The township permit was a wetlands permit.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the state was involved with that a little bit too.
And the county permit was for the wells or borings that they put in. I'm not even sure.
And they're temporary borings?
I don't know.
There's no work plan? So how could this be that here's one of the highest concentrations of ongoing contamination at the site? You don't have a work plan. You don't know how deep the borings
We don't
are.
have a work plan, I assume they have one.
Why was this allowed to go forward without knowing how they're gonna sample their dioxane in our waters of the state?
They have the ability to do that under our statute.
Part 201 is self-implementing. And this
So,
isn't covered under the.
and
If you have
And we
contamination
have
in
a
your own
consent
property,
judgment,
you don't
that's
have to
correct.
tell the state about it until you've done your own sampling. And at your leisure, releasing that data to the state.
You don't have to tell the state about it until you've finished it, and you want our blessing on it.
And it might not be finished for a couple of years.
That is correct.
No problem.
How the statute's written.
Meanwhile, the dioxine's spreading.
Now, public health wise, we obviously, if it's off your property, there are some different issues, but.
What about
that is
exposure
how
to the
tools
workers
designed.
who they may be contracting with?
They're having their health and safety, OSHA health and safety requirements, you know, of subcontractors or, you know, that's between Gelman and the subcontractors.
So this work doesn't require permits?
Yeah, I was gonna say, you know, Roger, you know, the DEQ is involved in every investigation that goes on and proving every, you know, anytime somebody's purchased a property and that may have contamination and they're doing a phase 1 and phase 2 investigation, we aren't involved with that. We aren't overseeing their
I know.
worker protection procedures.
I'm just pointing out so everybody knows that, you know, that there's a perception that the DEQ is watching out for our environment in any way they can. And people have to know that there are legal, statutory limitations on you.
Yep, people
So
should
we
know
explain
that.
that whenever we
So I have a
can.
question. Were there no permits required for these samples?
I just said, they've got county permit, state permit, and township permit.
So that's filed with the different organizations, so there's some detail there,
There's very little detail.
very little detail.
Right, it's not a work plan, it's just, you know, we want to grow these wells.
Borings, some number, maybe a number of borings.
How many borings?
I don't have that off the top of my head.
Well, you know, I think.
Are they next to the wells?
Without
or-
knowing the detail, one thing we've chosen to focus on is the fact that we've heard concerns from local stakeholders, and we've had interest ourselves at the DEQ in terms of understanding the current conditions over there, and the fact that Gelman's willing to use a self-implementing provision of the law to collect additional information that they're going to share with us as something that's hopefully going to provide some benefit, and we'll know what and whether that benefit is once we get the report that Brian referenced. So we're keeping an open mind that this is work that they're voluntarily performing that might lead to addressing some of the concerns that we've heard from this group and others in the community, as well as identifying.
So I think this one should be part of your quarterly report.
What?
The status of when you're gonna get the soil samples. You know, the fact that it happened, and now you're waiting for a work plan, and now you're waiting for getting the data.
So, well, that's.
Because if we hadn't brought it up today, nobody would know this.
The challenge
And
there
if
is.
Brian wasn't in the room, we probably wouldn't even know it, even if we had the data.
This was
Because
something
he's
that
the only
was
one that's able to talk about
a
it.
deliverable under the consent judgment, then we could say, okay, we've approved a work plan, the schedule for it is thus and such, and they're either on schedule or not.
Yeah, but this is what we talked about yesterday, about trying to reduce the uncertainty
It's a good
that
thing.
people have about the cleanup.
It's a good thing, Roger, that they're doing here. It's, you know.
It is a good thing, but it's a good thing also to know as much
It'll
as
be
you
useful
can.
information.
And
you know, I
if
think.
only somebody would require that they do some deep well drilling there to find out what's going on in the E unit underneath, because there's every indication that this is an ongoing source.
Yeah.
But we don't have enough proof of it because they don't drill down below the
Yeah, this has
20,
been
30 feet.
There's been a concern of the CARD group for a long time, and we've asked to find out what the soil concentrations are and when are they going to get cleaned up, because there are reports it could be as high as 2 million part per billion.
Well, now you're getting into the this area
Well,
down
just
here,
yeah.
where you're right.
So this is
The
ongoing.
Marshy area is kind of the soil system too, but the
Yeah.
real soil system is down here where the ponds were,
Yeah, yeah.
and in the area where they split properties.
Where's the burn pit relation to that,
It's
Roger?
right here.
So,
Shadow of the house.
Right here.
so did you include the burn pit in your, in the area that Vince is talking about with high soil concentrations?
Well, that's
my question.
where the highest concentrations of the soil were, not in the marshy area.
We don't
They're in
really
this
know.
area just south of it, around the ponds.
They haven't tested it for a long time, you know.
Well, as far as we know.
Yeah, as far as we know.
Yeah, they may be doing, voluntary testing there and not releasing it at all.
Roger, quick question for Mitch. Have you requested the data on the Marshy area from Gelman?
I'm going to defer to our counsel on that.
We've talked to them about it, and as I've said, we've agreed that we will wait till they put everything together in a final report, and that's when we will receive it.
Have they given you
We did
any
not have
idea?
we did not have any data from them.
Have they given you any idea on when that might be?
We've already said that we don't really exactly know.
So conceivably, it could be a year away?
We would be asking.
When would
If it's going to happen that long, we'll be pushing for it. It
Like-
won't be that long.
Okay, well, it's been, more than 6 months. When are you going to start asking?
Well, they were out there just recently still.
Still collecting data?
Yeah.
So
You have the questions about
they must be
the
permanent.
shutdowns.
I don't know what they decided to do additional soil sampling, I really don't know.
Yeah, they shut down the wells in October.
I thought they were temporary wells.
No, they're pumping wells. They're shut down in
Okay.
October, and that was listed in a recent summary of.
You're talking about the core area wells that were shut down.
Correct.
Talking about the
Purge
Marshy,
wells.
I was
That's
talking
all-
about the
that's all
Marshy
part of
area
this
data.
Investigation. That's all part of this investigation.
Okay, so they're trying to get some idea of what's going on without any pumping going on in the core area. That's maybe what their work plan is going to say when you finally get it. We can only speculate right now.
Did SIO didn't have any trouble with issuing building permits for that church sitting on that site?
Oh, that's not much.
Okay.
I had nothing to do with that one.
I'm just curious, it seems sort of like that's where that place is
agree with
moving
you.
out there.
I agree with you, but I don't know about that issue.
All right.
Do you know anything about it, Bruce?
What was the question?
So SIO didn't have any questions about issuing the building permits for
We
the
had many.
church?
We had
Okay.
many. We had many.
But it's all right. I mean, obviously, it's moving forward.
No, I'll answer the question.
Okay.
It met all of our standards. There was quite a bit of discussion between the DEQ, our attorney, and our consultants before we issued. We did take a position. We were informed that the position we were taking was outside the law. So in government, we can't do that. The thing, and we had demanded that we would get the reports. Because of the lawsuit, the answer they gave back, which was appropriate, which kind of goes along with what Brian said, is that we are not, the contractor is not going to release the information directly to the township. The township will have the ability to get that through the interveners process at court. So that's what I expect you're talking about, Brian. When you see the report, that might be the first venue that it.
No, we'll see it in the
before.
Yeah. Normally called the normal course of business.
So the problem here is that there's always that conflict between property rights and what government should know. The ordinance is written for the wetland thing with, protecting people, but also protecting rights. So it was issued, there's a bond that we're holding until we see the the report. We've got an environmental scientist ready to look at what we get. So the answer to the question is, did we have a problem? Of course we had a problem, but we couldn't act on the problem because of the law.
I think we were asking a question about the building of the church, though.
Yeah, well, the church, because, I mean, I just asked because we're looking at the wetlands in or the lower towns in the brownfield process right now, and they're requiring a physical barrier before they build these buildings. And so I just wondered how, and that's way down there, and it's like old dry cleaning stuff. And it's,
well, yeah, that's the big difference.
That's the difference, doesn't it? Chemistry Street?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
very different animals.
Yeah,
All right.
those do go twice up through Coleman.
Yeah, it seemed different when I read I read about the barrier and how they install them and everything, and it seemed different. I thought, well, they must be because this church is plopping right on
And
top
that's
of it without
another
that
serious problem that we
requirement.
have in many places right
Yeah,
now.
okay.
Bryce, when did the church go in? When did
Before I came to the township, so it would have
It's
been
been
early
there a bit.
2016. So in terms of the church, the process is the township looks at the site plan. The township has been consistent about pointing out to people that there may be a contamination process underneath. So we know that all users are aware. That includes a subdivision that's been approved. And within the bylaws and the development agreement and the master deed, it points out to buyers of the homes that there's 1,4-dioxane. And then the other process is the building department and the county. So it gets a rigorous, and we all work together, it gets a rigorous look. But just like what's been mentioned is that there's many ways to protect the public in an area of contamination as long as you follow prescribed rules, about sealing off parking spaces or, in some cases installing pumps to drain water away. So So do we have a problem? Again, yeah, there's always a problem because we don't know. But it met all the rules and we're confident that it's safe.
I will point out, since you're talking about the church, that when the split occurred, there was a baseline environmental assessment done. And I think it was contracted by the church. We got the EPA PA report, and one of the attachments in there is the BEA. So we finally got a copy of the old BEA. And nowhere in there, the consultant did it, but nowhere in there did he mention the previous soil sampling that was done in '88 and '98. Because you were wondering why, when they did this BEA and they did a handful of soil samples, they never sampled in the area where the really high concentrations of soil samples were, which infringe upon the split, not necessarily the church, but at least of the MIHQ. I don't have that layer up. But it's in this area here. And by the way, this is the 1990 map. There's actually 4 maps because, when Gelman produces things, they don't show you the whole picture. They just show you a piece, another piece, another piece. So I put them together and overlaid them. This is the one and only map that shows the burn pit from 1990. Haven't had one since because it's not a usable aquifer. Therefore, the state doesn't say, well, anything that happens there, that'll filter down to lower aquifers and be captured by the core system, once it gets into a usable aquifer. So this is the only map where you see the burn pit.
What do you think that level's at?
Well, it's more than 100 parts per billion or whatever in order to get on this map. And this is actually drawn at 1 part per billion, but it's in an area here where we know there was really high concentrations. You can go to the soils later and see the actual readings from 1988 to 1998. And those are just astoundingly high. So if we turn on that, soil samples, and pan back, again, 1 meter high is 1 part per billion, so we have to pan back a ways to see the tops of these. Let me turn off this this layer here.
So what's the high level there at?
Well, it's what you've been quoting.
To the moon?
200.
Oh my God.
You know, it's pretty high.
What's that represent? What number?
2.2 million parts per billion or something like that.
2.2 million.
This one actually, 1.9 parts per million. But that was in '88. And by '98, that location was down to just under 1 million parts per billion. So maybe it's only 500,000 now or 250. We don't know. They've never sampled it since. We were promised to get a soil sample like every 5 years, but then like at the end of the 5-year plan, they were supposed to get, they were holding off till the 5-year plan was done, and they're going to do another round of soil sampling. We never got it. So that's a loose end that really should be corrected.
All right, should we move on to 3D now? There were a couple questions from the Gelman third quarter report, and I wonder, Roger, could you elaborate on your question from that about the finalizing modifications to the consent judgment? That was a line in there, and we wonder what that means.
Yeah, I don't know either.
There's really nothing to say.
Oh, okay. That you can't say anything, or that there's nothing to say?
It's being negotiated.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, negotiations are ongoing.
Yeah, okay.
That's where they're trying to get it down to 7.2 in the consent judgment and in the permit. You know, everybody thought, well, you know, now it's 7.2, it's automatic, right? No, it's not automatic because we have this thing called the consent judgment, and the responsible party has to agree to any changes.
And yet, let's remember, and EPA acknowledged this again yesterday, that due in part to the monitoring that Gelman's doing, due in part to the monitoring that the county's doing in collaboration with the DEQ, we're all pretty satisfied that nobody's drinking water at concentrations at or above our criteria. So nobody's drinking water that's contaminated above an enforceable state standard. Remember, EPA said yesterday when asked what drinking water criteria they use, they don't have a specific one, they've got a range. Our 7.2 falls within the range that they use. So even though the consent judgment hasn't been formally modified to be predicated on the 7.2 revised criterion that took effect formally October 20th in a non-emergency rule manner, we're working with them and others to assure that nobody's drinking water above that new number. So I wanted everybody to be reminded of that. It's an important thing.
Is that enforceable?
It's not in the consent judgment. I guess we'll cross that bridge when and if we come to it. If we see, and this goes back to the earlier discussion, I mean, if we see an increasing trend at a residential well,
so like here in the, you know, this contamination that's moving through 465 DuPont. Supposed to render me a graph. If that moves north, northwest, northeast, and we know we already have hits here at 121D of 1 or 2 parts per billion.
Right. And we know we've got hits historically on Elizabeth, which is on the other side of that red line, just north of that 14 on the map.
Right.
That have, you know, for years have been in the 1 to 2 parts per billion range.
So
we're looking at select monitoring and residential wells and are prepared to react if we've got any reason to believe.
So if these properties over here, and by the way, these are just the ones that were on the Gelman database. Turn back on the Kevin's borehole logs here. These are the ones that have been sampled. And just so for context, I'm going to turn on all of the SIO properties in that area.
Yeah, but that's I mean, not all of them, I mean, just because there's a parcel, you put a dot in the center of those parcels and.
I'm just saying,
And
some of those,
sometimes
so
there's no
you're
parcel.
willing to take away, if it's a vacant parcel, you're willing to take away future wells from that, is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying that.
All right,
The
so let me
question
just turn
was,
these on then.
is the 7.2
Here are
enforceable?
here's the wells
You know,
and
that's, the point I'm reiterating, trying to make again, so everybody's clear, even though the consent judgment has been modified to be based on 7.2, that's now the legally enforceable criteria throughout the state.
So let's say.
Even though that hasn't been modified, we are watching wells to make sure that nobody's drinking water above that standard. And if we see
you're
it
right.
having any
I
reason to
appreciate
believe
that. Everybody knows
that's
that.
going to be
Everybody
the
knows
case,
that
we're
you're-
going to work with the company first
Yeah.
to get them to timely react to it, and if they don't do it, we'll be prepared to do it.
Right, so let's say these get hit at 3 or 4 or 5 parts per billion. When do they get replacement water? Are you going to expand the prohibition zone? Is the prohibition zone going to be expanded to take care of those? What's the
You're asking something in the
That's under
future.
negotiation and, you know,
What's
I
the
don't know the
contingency
answer.
plan for that?
What's the contingency?
Yeah. If this contamination starts to hit,
goes
what's the
under 14.
contingency plan?
It's not an easy one, right?
Well, they can do what they did in Evergreen and just expand the prohibition zone.
But how are they gonna get water out there?
Well, the city will have to run a pipeline and.
Under the highway?
Provision of water is a key consideration to the timeliness of being able to react to a situation like that. So we're aware of it, and we're gonna work to make sure people continue to have safe water as defined by state law. We're gonna continue to do that. Whether the consent judgment gets modified or not, hopefully the consent judgment will be modified in a mutually agreeable manner in a time so that the people that aren't under the confidentiality agreement can see what we've come up with. But in the meantime, we're monitoring, Gelman's monitoring, nobody's drinking water above the number that we're aware of. If we become aware of it, we're going to react.
Well, where's your house?
Right up there,
on
on Stowe.
the only cross street on
Right
Willows
there.
Drive. Yeah. Right,
Which side are you on, this side or this side?
That side right there by the
Right here?
cursor. Yeah.
Okay, so.
So he thinks there's city water already over there.
Well, if you go
No,
to
Walnut Ridge is all city water.
Well,
They have a
there's an
special.
office
region.
park. There's an office park south of Miller, I think. that has city
Atrium
water.
Office Park, that's city water, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so there's nearby, no, whether they can hook up over here or not. But what does that mean in terms of jurisdiction? Is this still going to be Scioto Township, or is this going to be annexed to the
We're
city?
getting way ahead of the game.
Yeah,
right
really,
now.
Roger.
We're-
That's yeah, the topic here.
Well, I think Will wants to know whether he's going to be paying, Will might like to know if he's going to be paying 3 or 4 times taxes.
Let me just reflect that we're on item 3D, and we have several other items to consider. If we can prioritize our needs, some of this maybe we can talk about offline after the meeting, so.
Right. I just wanted to raise that issue. Okay, let's move on.
Well, to which one? I know item 4 has been an ongoing issue, yes, I don't know, Prince, maybe could you?
Okay, so I would like to put on the table a request that additional near-surface groundwater tests be conducted on the near west side of the city of Ann Arbor. West Park would be a prominent location that should be considered. I think it is important that the community understand where this near-surface water exposures are. They were done in 2016, and there hasn't been additional tests in this area since then. I think it's time we do some additional testing, and I would like to know if that's going to be scheduled and when it'll be done. And I've talked to the city staff, and they were fine with testing at West Park, and they would be more than willing to assist with that. I think there's tremendous amount of groundwater flowing through the pipe at West Park that should be a good testing location. I have good evidence that that picks up a lot of groundwater. A lot of the seeps have been attached to the pipe system to reduce the undermining when they put that pipe in. I know the person who was involved in actually looking at that and following it. He was in the Drain Commission at the time. So that could be a very valuable piece of data for us to have. Wouldn't require any well drilling. All you do is pop the grate off of the swirl concentrator and do some sampling, preferably at a period where it's not been raining for at least a couple days. But even during a drought, you can stand on top of that grate.
Yeah.
I mean, there'll be a drought for 2 months, and there's water rushing through there.
Yeah. Sounds like a waterfall.
So there is a lot of groundwater collected there, and I think that would be an easy, low-hanging fruit, so to speak. And I think we need to know this data. I would like this, we haven't done anything since 2016, when we did find 2 and 3 part per billion near Slauson Middle School. So it's on the table. I wonder if we could get a response.
I mean, I haven't, I heard your response, or your request from before. We just haven't scheduled something like that. We did the other surface water sampling. I'm not against that. I haven't just had time to get in there and do it.
Can we prioritize it? I mean, we could take a vote at the CARD group,
Well, I don't think that, I mean, the it's, as far as prioritizing, we're with the meetings for the intervention and the EPA, that's one of the reasons why I haven't done it so far. So, I mean, we could commit probably before the end of the year.
Yeah, before then, at the 17 or 18, are you talking about?
I'm thinking
Before January.
Before January, this year.
So this is the the shallow well that's going to be emptying into that area as the ground falls away. So it's up to 82S. It was up to 330 parts per billion.
So that's like about 4 blocks up from West Park.
And that's deep, relatively deep, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right.
No, that's the shallow.
But isn't it 100 feet or so below the surface?
The screening interval.
It's 85 feet deep.
Okay.
So if you look at the Paul zone geological maps, it shows the groundwater coming out in the West Park area. So that's one reason I think behoove us to do those tests, to know, where we're at least, get a better handle. Some of the tests that were done, I'm glad you did them, but I don't think, the test that was done in West Park before, on the surface water, there's a pond at West Park.
We just grabbed.
Okay, that probably did not have any groundwater in it.
Potentially.
Because it's surface flow to that pond. I was part of the planning for that, for the city of Ann Arbor. I was involved in that. In fact,
we were getting a lot of questions on, what about West Park? What about
Hannah Park test probably was not groundwater at all as well.
It was the creek that running through there.
Well, the creek is in a pipe there. I have a photograph of it. A huge concrete pipe.
Where I took the sample was right behind the apartments there.
Yeah, there's no above ground creek there. It's all in the pipe.
I sampled an above ground creek right there.
Well,
I can show you where I sampled that.
So, can we?
At the time,
the question is,
high water.
Can we get this one area in particular sample? Is that what you're West Park or by the pipe?
That would be the minimum. I mean, I think it'd be nice to have more.
Well, how do you start there and see what the results are?
Can we have Dan?
Getting one sample at Allen Creek with some assistance from the city to pop the lid. Again, we're not going to be fooling around with their infrastructure.
Oh no, at least they're willing to come out.
That's very doable. So as far as additional sampling, what you are talking about is basically
geoprobes or whatever.
Geoprobe stuff. That is not going to be accomplished before next year.
Right.
We just won't have that time to deal.
And the other check a statement though. So when you say we haven't done anything since 2016, Vince,
in the near west side,
the surface waters that have been sampled in 2017, haven't some of those been on the near west side?
Well, not down at West Park area. That's
okay.
I'm getting a little confused on what you're calling. We did Allen Creek this year up
behind our house.
Behind your house a couple of times.
Right. But was nice that you did that. I think that's great. I think really, you know, it'd be better to go farther down where the hills falls away. As the topography falls away towards the river, like West Park, we're seeing water coming out of the hillsides. And I think and there's a lot of homes between that's a mile from the river. So West Park to the river is a mile, and a lot of houses between that. And we would like to get a handle on if there are potential exposures in there. And so even baseline data would be nice to have.
Well,
I say it's zero. I was surprised you found any near Slauson Middle School.
What Vince is, and I think we can wrap this up by saying, you know, this is an ongoing concern, and by addressing this, it would reduce the uncertainty that people have about where the dioxane is, where it's going, and how fast.
You know, I can make a commitment. We can get that one.
I would help you if you want help.
That I may ask for that.
Okay.
So because you're talking about a couple people from Miles, myself included.
Sure.
You know, we may need the
extra hand or two. Yeah,
right,
sure.
and then we got to get the city. So I can make that commitment before the end of the year.
Great.
Well, let's go on to the next item then.
Sure.
Thank you.
So I think we're into the recap area. Is that right, Jen?
Yeah, number 5.
And it really impacts number 6 too, because.
Oh, wait a minute. I had one question about prohibition zone N4. It's still not. We haven't covered the last item. So I guess I have a question. Does the finding of 2-part pavilion and 3-part pavilion near Slauson Middle School, does that violate the prohibition zone because now people are exposed to the compound? I'm not sure in the state law on prohibition zone if you have to prevent any exposure or dangerous exposure or how that is worded.
The prohibition zone as the Gelman, please.
Yeah, actually the prohibition zone here prevents people from using groundwater as, you know, drinking water,
that's
irrigation,
the exposure.
you know, open loop heat pumps, that sort of stuff. It doesn't prohibit
other exposure
the existence
routes
of contamination within the zone. It's prohibiting, you know, activities that could either exacerbate or
and
expose people to the contamination.
And as far as a prohibition, you know, if they're out of compliance with that, that's related. How the current CJ is related is if groundwater contamination greater than 85 exit is outside that prohibition zone. Then they are in violation and can have penalties put on. So what you're talking about at Slauson, that shallow, I mean, first off, they're not. You've got say 1 to 3, whatever.
2 to 3.
2 to 3.
Right.
They're not. You know, they're not in
a dangerous zone.
Well, they're not in violation of the prohibition strictly related to how it's written up in the Gelman CJ. You know, they're.
All right. Well, I wanted a clarification on that because I was wondering, prohibition zone. My understanding was you were basically allowed to isolate the contaminant, maybe a parking lot or fencing. So my question was, does any contact with the compound violate the prohibition zone?
Not.
And you're saying no.
Well, this is Gelman specific. The prohibition zone that you're referencing is Gelman specific. It's related to groundwater use, and then it also in violation is related to going above the current the criteria identified, 85 and
2800.
So would this be in violation outside of Gelman? If this was not a consent judgment?
No.
It would not be in
no,
violation?
No, we're below, you know, some of the pathways that...
You're below the
drinking, I mean, you're not going to drink that water, but it's below the 7.2 anyways. And then the other exposure routes for, let's say, a dermal, you know, or use of shallow, you're below what the current numbers as far as people had questions on vapor intrusion. You're below what we had the best information currently as 1900, but even you're below what was before under our emergency rule 29 screening number, so you're well below that too. So
okay,
let's move on.
So 5 and 6 we can kind of talk about together, I suppose.
Right. Anybody have any comments about the meeting yesterday? How many were not at the meeting yesterday?
I wasn't at the meeting.
The invite list was rather restricted, it seemed.
Oh, yeah. Well, it was restricted, but there's probably more people than there are here today. So,
Yeah, there was a
and,
lot more.
and there is a video of it that will be shared on
About
this.
30 videos, I think.
A lot of government people,
Yeah.
which is good.
Right. Anyway, the bottom line is the EPA Superfund decision is on hold for now, but that doesn't mean that things don't go forward, because
Well, met the criteria for Superfund, 28.5.
oh, yeah, they got
Technically-
there's a score,
Yeah, the
and if it's
score.
above 28.5,
It
all the way to
qualifies.
100,
Yeah.
it's treated the same. So we wanted to know what was the actual score above 29. They won't tell us. It doesn't matter. It was high. It could have been 29. It could have been 99.
So
Doesn't matter.
technically, they could have declared this a Superfund site.
No.
Or they could have
No, they
gone
could have
next to the next.
No, there's a
next
process.
stage,
Yeah.
yeah.
There's a process. And it turns out that that process is on hold. But the investigation that Michael Burkhoff is continuing. He's a project manager on it. He's not full-time on this project. He's got other projects. He is going to be putting together with the DEQ quarterly and semi-annual reports to keep people informed. And we're going to be working with him. I'm going to be working with him, and some other members of it who were there volunteered. And of course the DEQ. And it's going to be built on some of what Dan's reporting is going to be. So it's important that Dan's reporting includes all the things that CARD thinks should be included, so that when it gets to Michael, it can be included in the EPA reports that are going to be generated.
We will be generating the reports, DEQ, and we'll submit those as requested from the EPA. Now we'll make them available, and they won't, I don't know, my impression is they don't generate their own report from ours.
No.
They will utilize what we.
But they may require you to add things to the report.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
and that's
we'll
like I
work
said.
together with them
Yeah.
to
Right.
figure out content and format,
Mhm.
yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Right. So that's an important thing for everybody to weigh in on and make sure that we're getting all the information we need as community people.
So is this
I
still,
think that's something CARD should talk about at some point. What would
Absolutely.
you like to see in the report?
So we probably can't do it today, but as we, in the coming quarters, we're going to be reviewing the things and making suggestions or demands, whatever you want to put it, improvements in what we think should be in the report. And we can also comment on our own report. The other thing I found out from Nuria, who is the other EPA that talked yesterday, is that if we have any documents that we think should be included in the record, we can submit those. So that's problematic because, we have like 15 gigabytes of documents. We aren't going to give her, obviously, they don't want all that in the record. So we got to, as a CARD group, we may want to point out the things that weren't submitted to them to date. Their information that's apparent from their PA report, they call it, preliminary analysis report. Assessment report. There's obviously information that they didn't have when they made that report. So we're going to provide some information along those lines. But there may be others. There may be other documents that we have or individual jurisdictions have that should be part of the record. Because one of the statements I made yesterday is I want to make sure that 100 years from now, people can look at a record and find out why this dioxane is still around and what was done or not done back in the early days to address it.
Is the preliminary assessment a public document? Sorry, I didn't see your hand.
go ahead.
Not yet.
But it will be.
I presume.
Yeah.
Isn't it public now?
Yeah, it's
It's
Yeah, it's
public,
public.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it'd be, if I got a FOIA,
Yeah.
I'd have to release it. It's a public document.
Yeah, it's, we have the link to it. I wouldn't, I'm not sure.
No, it's been delivered to us
Yeah,
by mail.
yeah.
Oh, okay, so you have it, okay.
We have,
So somebody have to FOIA it to
yes,
see it?
yes.
Well,
Any official who, from the
Just
township?
send one to either,
Matt.
Mike or me.
I think a question that a lot of people ask me, I don't know why me, is the fact that the city and the county didn't jump on with this request for the EPA affect the scoring?
No.
No. Can I,
So they
let me
took
just
all
try
that
to
into
give
account.
a quick summary of what it is, of what happened. As you know, Scioto Township, Ann Arbor Township, et cetera, petitioned the EPA to list this on the national priority list as a Superfund site. So the first thing they did is assign somebody to do some scoring. Various negative aspects get points. If it adds up to more than 28.5 points, then you reach the base threshold and it can be declared a Superfund site. As Roger was saying, they advised us that it did reach over that amount, but instead of proceeding to complete the investigation to determine whether in fact to declare it and put it on the Superfund site, because of a number of things that were ongoing, including the fact that it was in litigation, that there were additional parties, that there was some consultation going on and negotiation between the parties, the fact that Gelman was doing something, less than but something, they decided to put the decision on hold for now. This Michael Burkhoff is an EPA official. He's been designated as the EPA contact to work with the DEQ. The DEQ will take the lead on continuing the investigation, but they're required now to make quarterly reports to the EPA, which we'll all have access to and which we've been discussing now is what we would like to also see in those reports. We can ask the EPA to include that in their requests. And so that will be ongoing for a period of time. We don't know how long, but they have not relinquished control of the site. It can still be declared a Superfund site if ultimately the movement towards some sort of resolution is not satisfactory to EPA.
And that's without a second formal request?
That's without a second
So
formal
one
Could
thing that came.
could I fill in a couple things? I was there too. They've retained authority under this CERCLA, as Mike said, and one of the issues that came up, Rita asked a question on this, I asked a question on this, was what would trigger the change in involvement with the EPA to get them more involved? And they were vague with their response. There are no specific objective criteria that have been stated at this time that would trigger them to become more involved. That concerned me as I sat and listened to all of this. I'm still hopeful that something positive can come of this, but I am concerned about their lack of definition.
No benchmarks.
No benchmarks.
So yeah, that was brought up by several people, including myself and a couple other people around the table here, that there should be benchmarks for EPA when and if those benchmarks are not met, maybe the Superfund should then be proceeded with. They were reluctant to say they would even have benchmarks. Now the CARD group could suggest benchmarks. That's something that we could maybe work on and suggest. Benchmarks meaning, number of wells contaminated, parts per billion reached at certain locations. I don't know. That's something we could discuss. I haven't really come up with a good, answer for that. But they're not going to do it. They may do it later, but they said they're not doing it now. But I think a lot of us have felt that there should be a benchmark. There should be benchmarks for failure or success. And the community would like to know that, and I think the DEQ would like to know it, and everybody would like to know. And unfortunately, that's not happening.
About the other governments being involved in, throwing that in the ringer with a weight behind it if it made any difference.
No, it stands, each one of these stands on the merits of the science and the facts. So a couple of other things though, and they've been similar to what we talked about. But the EPA did confirm and emphasize that one, there's no one who's known to be drinking water that's contaminated above the thing. That will continue to be a primary focus of theirs. They'll always be checking that. DEQ does that as well. Secondly, is what we talked about earlier. They're committed to, through the quarterly reports, is making sure that information is disseminated to the public in a form that the public will understand. So it's the communication aspect. And lastly, which I don't think we should overlook, Representative Dingle has been pushing this, and she was there, and she put the EPA on the hot seat and said, oh, by the way, lacking milestones and lacking an action plan, I'm going to be on your back all the time too. And she's been instrumental in pushing the EPA to get us to where we are. So I think I think it makes sense that the EPA and the DEQ are finding a way to work on this together. It continues to frustrate me, as many others, is that milestones don't mean a whole lot to the way that I do business, because milestones only make a difference if I know what the plan is. What's the outcome? And then what are the milestones you have to hit? So just setting a milestone is not something that makes sense to me. But I get it. I'm not going to argue the point.
Plan, yeah.
Yeah.
What's going to happen? When's it going to happen?
Yeah.
What are the consequences if it doesn't happen?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd just like to reiterate on behalf of Mrs. Dingle, that is something that we talked about with the EPA repeatedly yesterday and again after the meeting, that as long as this plan is still being developed and we don't have a tangible, an end goal necessarily, that having the wiggle room to be able to say, as opposed to 10 wells need to be contaminated, we're at 9, so no action is going to be taken right now, to be able to say like, nope, right now we might be at 9, we might be at 10, this is unacceptable. Or whatever the case may be. Having a tangible benchmark at this point might not be the most conducive use of our resources. So we are by no means letting this slide by. We're looking for the appropriate pressure, but on EPA, without a doubt.
That is appreciated. So nothing bad, only good's going to come from cooperation between the two agencies, focus on communication to the people, to everyone, to the public, and making sure that everyone is safe. Then we start, that's, as long as those are the priorities, which were iterated by EPA and DEQ confirmed, so they're all on the same page. So while we didn't get what we wanted, at least, it's not accurate to say I'm satisfied with the level of discussions, but I was pleased to know that there was a lot of discussions that went back and forth.
And things like expanding a prohibition zone, like we see that bump to the north, and all that still rests with the DEQ here.
Right.
Okay.
Well,
yeah,
litigation.
That's for that consent.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
prohibition zone is completely tied to that consent
That is
agreement.
completely tied to the consent agreement, yes.
In fact, the department didn't want one and argued against it.
We have one.
I argued against the prohibition zone.
Yes.
Because then you could just act everywhere where you needed to act.
We wanted more pumping, we
Sure.
wanted more other stuff, but we got what we got.
Yeah.
So this might actually help the DEQ.
Any of us were either.
The EPA might be able to back up some of the DEQ's wishes along those lines.
It seems to me that the actual plan that we're working on is to simply continue monitoring for the next 200 to 300 years and expand the prohibition zone and distribution of city water as needed.
That would be the company's plan.
Well, it seems like that's the plan.
De facto plan.
It's the de facto plan
That's happening.
that's been happening, and the consent judgment doesn't have a timetable on it anymore, so it might as well plug in 300 years.
That's a good point.
Well, there was talk that the EPA was reluctant to do a Superfund with the knowledge that the DEQ is supposedly trying to get this out of the court and supposedly would work toward a total cleanup. Now, I don't know if that's a defined statement by the DEQ, or if that's just a wish that somebody has promulgated.
What do you mean DEQ is trying to get it out of the court?
Well, the DEQ would like to remove this consent judgment and have full control, and that the EPA's impression was that the DEQ would then proceed with what EPA would do anyway, which would
what I had
work
heard,
toward a
maybe
cleanup.
you're referring back to the July 27th, July 2016 conversations with EPA, Jones Tanaka and Company, wherein the EPA was considering whether this site would be eligible for listing on the Superfund list, and one of the statements they made is they weren't sure if it was eligible because of the state consent judgment, and both the state and Gelman would have to agree to relinquish. And then what they didn't mention, but I know the judge would have to agree to that too, so you'd have to have the state, Gelman, and the judge agree to relinquish venue, control, jurisdiction. I don't know what the proper
The judge
legal
can't
term
decide
would
that
be.
unilaterally?
The judge could, sure.
Yeah, okay.
I think.
Yep.
So the department hasn't taken any steps to take it out of the state court. And we're participating in modifying consent judgments.
Is there no intent for the DEQ to try and get it out of the court at this time?
I'm not sure why we would, honestly.
Okay.
I mean, that's where all of, most of our leverage is through the consent judgment. It's got enforceable terms. You're almost, what it almost sounds like you're talking about is turn it into a voluntary cleanup with DEQ oversight, which.
Well, we've sometimes been told that, oh, we can't do anything and we can't tell you anything because it's all in the courts. I mean, that's really a common comment made in public meetings.
Well, the city administrator yesterday said that too. He said it'd be nice to get this out of the hands of the lawyers and into,
Regulatory. Yeah, regulatory.
But then again, it's back with Danaher, it's going to be back in court.
So, let me just talk in general terms about our remediation and redevelopment division programs, where we've got compliance with environmental regulations as a goal and enforcement as one tool to get compliance. The sordid history of this site, 30 plus years, shows that we tried to get voluntary compliance, didn't get that to our satisfaction, ended up going to court, got a consent judgment that I'd say many could live with early on, back when it required restoration of the aquifer to unrestricted use, using a cleanup criterion of 3 parts per billion. Law changed, court rulings changed, so my point is, even though we've got these enforcement tools in our bag of tricks, there's risks when we go to court. Now, I understand that there are different opinions on the state's performance in court and whether that's and how that's affected the outcomes. But the point I'm trying to make is, when you go to court, I'd say any party that can guarantee an outcome in a court process is probably making a statement that I wouldn't want to bet on, because you don't know what's going to happen, and that's what we're seeing here. So, but the fact is, we're in court, and we haven't taken any steps to get out of court because I'm not sure what the alternative is. And Brian said we got leverage. Yet we still have to go to court to get the judge to enforce it, and we haven't always done well in that regard either.
I think some of the confusion might have come from, because I heard it yesterday too, and I don't remember who I heard it from, but I thought there was some either EPA or DEQ official that said something about achieving a full cleanup.
Right.
And that's what people are focusing on. I don't know, and I heard it too, but I don't remember what it was. I don't know whether it was just a generic description and people are putting way too much in it, or whether it was a policy choice. So I think that's what the problem is, because many of us heard that that statement, and being hopeful as we continue to be. Sometimes we attribute what we'd like to hear in that. Frankly, I was skeptical of the claim, but at any rate, that's what this is about.
Okay, I didn't call that. I sure as heck hope I didn't make the statement.
Roger recorded it, so we can go back and check. Thank you, Roger.
I just wanted to put that input and what I think many of us heard and this question.
I have one question about this.
Wait.
Oh, well, just before we adjourn, I just want to speak just 1 second to the concept of the 7.2 and EPA standard. They gave a 3 orders of magnitude range for the dioxane standard, and I think that needs to be pointed out. And 7.2 is certainly in that upper range of 0.035 to 35. So I think that needs some perspective. And I would also just, as a toxicologist, I try never to say anything is safe. And I've heard that term used at the table here, and I just would be precautious and just say that based on current available knowledge, this is the criterion for protection of public health, and just leave it at that, and don't ever declare it safe.
I never say safe.
I mean, if you just look at the historical for lead, it's a
acceptable level.
We appreciate that, and
also applies safe.
That we get. Just tell us whether it's safe or not.
Yeah, but it's not. You can't say that. You just say, based on what we know, this is our best estimate of where we should be. But it's also, it's accepting close to a 1 in 10,000 increased cancer risks. It's not, it's not 100,000. It's about 1 in 50.
Well,
the 35 would be the 1 in 10,000.
Right.
3.5 would be 1 in 100,000, and the 0.35 would be 1 in a million.
And the difference is the state uses this 32-year lifetime exposure instead of the 7-year lifetime exposure that most other states the EPA uses.
It's pretty, it's different than what most people are used to, and I'm just
and I can relate to 1 in 100,000 cancer risk issues personally.
Well, but it's not for an individual. That's the other thing. We're talking about population risk, and people mix that up. And that guy did that at one of those public meetings from DEQ, and it wasn't right.
You mean?
There's a difference between individual person's risk and population risk.
And it was probably Corey.
It was Corey.
Yeah. So that's Department of Health and Human Services.
Yeah. He's not nice about it.
What were you going to say, Vince?
And he was
so
wrong.
has there been a change on going to either Gelman or Donaher or whoever to help pay for this, or is it still being funded through state effort?
What funding?
Any of that?
What
well,
the monitoring.
The monitoring. Any of this work, is any of it being paid for by
Gelman? Most of it is Gelman.
Okay.
The only
We just pitched in a few extras.
the only stuff that DEQ has direct currently is our split sampling, of monitoring wells. That's on our nickel because we send it to our lab.
Or when you do near surface water testing.
Well, they did. The shallow groundwater investigation of 2016, we were going to do that using our funds. In the end, we developed a work plan, but in the end, we asked Gelman, and they did it using their funds.
Oh,
so
that's good to know.
There was time spent with Kevin and I doing a work plan, getting things set up to get it started. But in the end, we said, hey, we're going to be doing this. We're giving you a chance to be involved, and they said, okay, we will do it using your plan and your oversight. And then the yearly residential well sampling, it's a DEQ fund. But everything else that the remediation activities, the groundwater pumping and treating, the monitoring wells, the majority of the monitoring wells are also, and then some business business water supply wells are all funded by Gelman. Now they have their own internal lab. They have their people collecting the samples. They do send out a portion, usually every month or every couple of months, to an external lab that they subcontract to double check their numbers. And like we split, but the majority of the work that's been ongoing is under Gelman's funding. Yes, I'm sorry.
Can you share a schedule of when your staff is going out and checking, monitoring wells?
I promised that I made a promise to do it quarterly. I have to do it here in this fourth quarter, so It kind of moves around depending on what other things are happening. So I hope to get out here in November, early December to do some split sampling with them at selected wells. And again, I pick some wells. I may, if we have some questions, I may pick certain wells. So I don't have a date yet for fourth quarter, and I just do it on the fly each quarter to try to get some, you know.
So do you list like where you'll be on each date, or?
No, we haven't done that in the past.
Because I'd sort of like to see what they're doing and where they're doing it.
This has been a request too in the past, that it'd be good if we had like a video record of here's what the typical sampling process is. So I'm willing to go out sometime and grab some video of what it takes.
You can also talk to Eric Shaw.
About the internal video.
About videos.
Yeah, training videos.
Yeah, there's a internal
sort of
group
we
that
have some
does
resources
stuff.
internally that can do a really
And
nice job
Washington
on that.
County is also doing it on a regular basis.
I will tell you, and this is again
We
just
do
my
the
perception.
We do residential sampling.
Oh,
You
you
know,
do.
Gelman is doing that. You know, is doing this. I go out and split. We haven't had no problems. It's been a great relationship. You know, they accommodate me a lot of my schedule. I believe we're going to get. This is my opinion alone. I believe we get some pushback if people start saying, "Okay, we want you to, you know, go out and we're going to have." By the way, there's going to be people videoing. Now you're a lot. I mean, they're out in the
Well, that's
private,
what I'm
but
thinking. They might be okay with us.
yes,
videotaping
but
it. I'm not sure
other
they're gonna want
like
a
the
public
CARD group,
announcement
they're made.
inviting.
They have not been
people to
as
watch.
receptive to the CARD group suggestions. But I will approach them about that. You know, I want to tell them that, you know, we'd like to video it rather than just show.
There's a precedent. I've videoed their Evergreen process. I've got a
I'm-
tour of that.
You are absolutely right. I'm just saying that I would want to inform them
Right.
that, hey, we're gonna, you know, people
It's
are
for
gonna
informational purposes
video,
to the
and I'm
citizens.
just saying you may get some pushback. Whoa, time out here. Let's step back here. And
You know, if they
just
really
in the
wanna-
current atmosphere of litigation and just, you know, what has been going on.
If
That's
they
all.
really want to rehab their brand, they should agree with it.
I don't disagree with you there, Roger, but I just, my plan is to get at least a handful of split samples with them here in November, December as kind of the fourth quarter. And then I try to do that quarterly, and we send it to our lab, they send it to their lab. Most of the time when I split, they do it internally to their lab, and they also send it to their subcontracting labs.
And apparently, sometimes they keep a split sample.
What do you mean keep, Roger, define?
Well, there was an instance a couple months ago where there was a second analysis of the same samples from like 2 weeks or a month before.
I remember that. I'm not sure where they were outside of the, I thought they were within the holding time.
I think it might have been exactly 2 weeks out.
When you collect a sample, it is preserved, at least the method that we use and the method that they use.
It was interesting when I looked at the results, the original results and the results after 2 weeks. It was like reduced by, I don't know, 5–7%, something like that. So I said, well, this is the solution. All we have to do is pump all the water out, put it in vials, and hold it for 180 days or whatever it was, and all the dioxane just goes away. Anyway, with that.
You're allowed to hold samples for 2 weeks, and if it's outside that 2 weeks, then under the quality assurance, quality control measures of the analysis, you know, then you start putting question on the data.
Right. Was there a question back there?
You wanted to introduce yourself again.
It's not a question. I just wanted to say hi and introduce myself. I'm Ann Bannister, and I'm a newly minted Ward 1 City Council person.
Oh, good.
I will take my first swearing in on Monday, and I look forward to helping you all and working on this in any ways that I can on the environmental committee, or testifying in Lansing, or transparency with the community, or and citizen budget priorities. So I'm looking to all of you to help me, and I look forward to joining you at your December 6th meeting.
Did everybody who came in late get signed up on the sign-up sheet?
Sign up sheet.
Make sure you write on here, you're probably not on this here.
I am. Bannister.
Everybody's on here then?
Yes.
Good.
I wanted to add a couple people that.
One thing, you know, like I said, I'm going to be doing split sampling in the fourth quarter here. People were identifying maybe a video taping, you know, in something. I'm not going to commit that we'll do that in the fourth quarter. That's going to take some preparation time, some, you know, getting ready. But I will do some split sampling in the fourth quarter, then we'll do it in the first quarter. Truthfully, we usually do it later in the first quarter so you don't get the ice on your VOE vials as much. So just, I want to be clear on what I said.
We can video from the street if need be.
I mean, yeah, I mean, they're going on outside that way, but if it's going to be our group, I will let them know what the
There was
stuff
a
we're
woman
doing
here
for
from the
that.
university last meeting that said she wanted to do some kind of documentary about this whole thing, maybe.
There's a whole bunch of things like that going on.
People are interested, so that's all.
All right, I think we've gone over enough, so the next meeting is December 5th, and that's going to be at night, because it's one of the odd, you know, the quarterly meeting is only the one we have during the day, and the rest of the meetings.
The meeting will be here again.
It'll be here. So thanks everybody for coming. Feel free to network and mingle afterward. I don't think this room's reserved for anything.
I don't know.
Thanks for your interest.
Typically not. And we already ran 10 minutes over, so nobody's